Hey guys, welcome back to another great game of PlayEDH. Starting us off is Dylan, playing Will and Lucas. This is an ultra-fast ad-nos list, and while this version is no longer on the list, it does gain access to a larger card pool and a few combos with its commanders. Next up is Hidden on Sisay Weatherlight Captain. Sisay Tutor Change is a 5-color mid-range combo list. Yes, it might not be the fastest deck, but oh boy, does this deck have answers. Sisay's ability to grow and tutor cards is insane, and always a threat, just given a bit of time. In the third spot is Matt on Kinnan, and what can I say that people don't already know? Kinnan makes way too much mana, lets you sit back on Kinnan activation for big dumb boys, and has the ever-looming threat of just combo killing the table, with a few very searchable artifacts. And bringing up the rear is Anthony on Najeela. This is a 5-color Thassa's Consultation list that backdoors into an infinite creatures combats combo with Najeela, who even if just left alone can amass a horde of warriors to take their opponents out.
Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board.
Also, if you want to support the channel, check out INTOTHEAM for some cool shirts and use code DOBMTG10 or the link down below for 10% off your order. But without further ado, let's get onto the gameplay. Before we start, Matt mulliganed to 4, and both Hidden and Matt actually have Gemstone Caverns, with Hidden exiling a Verdant Catacombs and Matt exiling an Invasion of Ikoria. Dylan starts off the game with a Mana Confluence. Taking one, he casts a Ragavan. But Hidden responds with a Mental Misstep to counter the monkey. Dylan then follows it up with a Lotus Petal, cracking it for a blue for a Mystic Remora, with Hidden really wishing he kept his misstep. Hidden plays out an Exotic Orchard and taps out to cast a Dauthi Voidwalker. Matt plays and cracks a Flooded Strand for a Tropical Island, but shortcuts as he casts his Commander Kinnan, following that up with a Mox Amber. He can't pay the 4 and Dylan draws. Anthony also plays out an Exotic Orchard and taps it for a Soul Ring. He feeds a card to Dylan and says he'll hold off for now as he passes the turn. Dylan pays to keep his fish alive and then plays out an Otawara as land for turn. Hidden plays out a Wooded Foothills as land for turn. He then casts a Kaelin and gets a treasure off the ETB, with Hidden ending his turn cracking his Foothills for a Savannah. Matt heads straight to combat. He turns Kinnan sideways at Anthony, and then ends his turn there, as his Mold of Fort is really showing. Anthony has a Trop as land, and taps out for Italian. The creature resolves with the remaining 2 on the ETB. Dylan untaps and continues to pay for his fish. But that's most of his mana, as he hands the turn over after that. Hidden plays and cracks a Flooded Strand for a Plateau. He debates casting his commander, but has a funny feeling and hands the turn over after that. Matt draws and has something to do as he casts a Birds of Paradise. He continues to combat, this time sending Kinnan at Dylan for 2. Anthony has a Scalding Tarn as land and cracks it to grab out a Badlands. He then heads to combat and sends Talion Hidden for 3, with Anthony on his second main casting his commander Najeela, as he doesn't want to feed any more cards to the fish. Dylan finally lets his fish go, with it being exiled to the Dauthi zone. A Glimmer Void then comes out as land, with him casting his commander Will the Wise. This will trigger Talion to deal him 2 and draw Anthony a card. Will then resolves with everyone at the table taking the offered clue, with Dylan getting a total of 4 clues himself. Hidden then at his end step cracks his clue to draw. Hidden plays out a Windswept Heath and for 3 casts his commander Sisay. Hidden will take 2 from Talion, but the commander resolves, and since Hidden used his treasure to cast Sisay, she'll enter with a +1/+1 counter. Hidden then ends his turn cracking his fetch for a Bayou, with Matt cracking his clue at end step. Matt plays out a basic forest and then activates Kinnan. He looks 5 cards deep and ends up picking a Phyrexian Metamorph. The clone enters as a copy of Talion, with Matt also naming 2, with Anthony cracking his own clue at end step. Anthony untaps and then goes in the tank, thinking about his game plan. He asks if anyone can take Sisay out as he's worried about Hidden untapping. He then heads to combat and sends Najeela and his newly created warrior Dylan for 4. With Anthony on his second main, playing a Tarnished Citadel and casting an Arcane Signet. He'll take 2 off Matt's Talion, but is done after that. Dylan draws and has a Gemstone Caverns as land. He then casts his other commander Lucas and takes 4 off the 2 Talion triggers. Hidden starts off his turn with a Demonic Tutor. He takes 4 off the 2 Talions, and before the tutor resolves, Dylan flashes in an Archivist of Ogma. There's another 2 Talion triggers with the Archivist resolving, and Hidden getting to search a card out to put into hand, with Dylan at least getting 1 draw and a life back from his Archivist. Hidden then plays out a Tarnished Citadel as land and casts a Dockside Extortionist. He'll take 4 from the Talions, with Anthony responding with a Force of Will, pitching a Swan Song. Hidden does have a response as well, as he free casts a Fierce Guardianship. But unfortunately for him, this is his 3rd spell, as Dylan casts a Mindbreak Trap to exile everything and put an end to Hidden's turn. Matt plays out a Gaia's Cradle and follows it up with a Lotus Petal, tapping a bunch to overload a Cyclonic Rift. Although even overloaded, this will still trigger Anthony's Talion to draw him a card. The Rift then resolves, and at least there's a consolation prize, as will trigger to give everyone a clue, with Dylan getting another 4 himself. Matt then casts a Delighted Halfling and taps 2 more lands for a Talisman of Curiosity. It's now combat time as Matt sends Kinnan and his clone Talion at Anthony, with Anthony Bosejoing the Metamorph to save a bit of damage. Matt ends up finding a breeding pool as he hands the turn over, with Anthony cracking his own clue at end step. Anthony has an Ancient Tomb as land and taps the tomb to help him cast his Soul Ring. He uses the ring to help cast his Arcane Signet. Next up is a Tinder Wall, which doesn't stay for very long, as he cracks it for red to help replay Najeela. He then casts a Lotus Petal into a Rite of Flame to recast the original Talion, continuing to name 2. He is now successfully rebuilt as he ends his turn there. A Scalding Tarn then comes out from Dylan as he cracks it for a Savannah. He then recasts Will and takes 2 off Talion. The table once again gave him the clues, with him getting 4 in total. 2 mana then gets him his Commander Lucas, with Anthony getting to draw again. Dylan then passes, with Hidden at his end step cracking a clue to draw. Hidden has a Bloodstained Mire as land and then casts Kellen again. He takes 2 off Talion and gains a treasure, although it doesn't stay long as he then casts his Commander Sisay. Talion triggers again, with Sisay getting a +1/+1 counter as she resolves. Hidden then cracks his fetch for an Underground Sea and uses it to cast his Dauthi Voidwalker. Anthony draws and Hidden passes, with Matt at his end step cracking a clue to draw. But Anthony does have a response as he tries to sword Kinnan. But Matt has a Mindbreak Trap to keep his commander safe. Matt plays out a Cephalid Coliseum as land and taps his Delighted Halfling to help him cast an uncounterable Nezahal. He then taps his Cradle for 4 and activates Kinnan. He looks 5 deep and finds a Void Winnower, which really puts a hamper on things, as Matt then hands the turn over to Anthony. And man, was that something the table did not want to see coming, as Anthony untaps and casts a Vamp Tutor. This will trigger the Nezahal to draw Matt a card, but the tutor does resolve, losing Anthony 2 life as he finds a card to put on top. Anthony then draws the tutored card, with him then casting a Cutsoul. The creature resolves, and now free from any interaction, Anthony casts a Derevi, which taps down Lucas on ETB. Anthony then heads to combat and sends Talion at Matt for 3, with Najeela and her newly created warrior heading at Dylan. Dylan does block a warrior with Will, but drops to 10 after damage. There are now 2 Derevi untap triggers, which untaps Anthony's Exotic Orchard and Arcane Signet. Anthony then ends his turn discarding a One Ring and a Tainted Pact due to hand size. Dylan on his turn casts a Relic of Legends, following that up with a Ranger Captain, who resolves and on ETB finds him an Esper Sentinel to hand, but he passes there as he goes looking for it. Hidden draws and starts thinking about his options, After a little bit, he decides to just hold up his mana and hand the turn over. Matt untaps and then activates Kinnan, although it looks like this time luck was not in his favor, as he whiffs. He then ends up activating Kinnan again to go looking. This time he finds a flesh duplicate, which enters as a copy of Derevi, who on ETB untaps his Cradle. This gives him another Kinnan activation, but he whiffs again, then heading to combat after that. He sends his Void Winnower and Nezahal at Dylan, who can only block with odd CMC and chums with his Ranger Captain. Matt does get 2 Derevi triggers as he tries to untap his Gaia's Cradle, but Anthony free casts a deflecting swat to untap his own tropical island instead, with Matt then ending his turn casting a Grim Monolith, taking 2 from Talion. Anthony starts off his turn with a Scrub Land. He then heads into combat and sends Talion and Derevi at Matt, with Dylan getting Najeela, Kutzel, and 2 newly created warrior tokens. Then before blocks, Matt activates Kinnan. He looks at the top 5 and finds a Jin Gitaxias Core Augur. Matt then blocks Derevi, with Dylan then tying to combat damage. Anthony then tries to initiate infinite combats due to the untap triggers, but Hidden knows it's now or never as he activates Sisay. Hidden unfortunately doesn't have any direct outs as he's actually holding the Baron Master Wizard in hand, and has to make a deal with Matt as he grabs out a Derevi of his own to untap Matt's Gaia's Cradle. Matt then activates Kinnan hoping for a Thorn Mammoth, but instead finds a Gilded Drake, who attempts to swap control with Najeela. Anthony ends up casting an Intuition in response and finds a Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, and a Path to Exile. Hidden then gives him the path, with Anthony casting it to remove the Drake. Unfortunately for Hidden, he can't use his Dothy due to the Kutzel, and the swap doesn't happen. Anthony then heads to combat and sends his 2 existing warriors plus 2 new warriors at Hidden, with Talion heading at Matt. Hidden will block 2 warriors, with Matt taking the hit. There are 3 Derevi triggers, with Anthony tapping down Hidden's Derevi and untapping 2 of his lands. Anthony then taps 5 for another combat, and this time sends Talion at Matt, with Derevi and his 2 warriors heading at Hidden. Anthony then realizes that even with the 2 new warriors, he'll also need to attack with Kutzel as well, as Matt could chump and not give him the 5 untaps he needs. Hidden then blocks the Kutzel, with Matt not blocking anything. Anthony has 5 Derevi triggers, with 6 of them targeting his land and an Arcane Signet, with 1 of them to tap Matt's Derevi. But with those triggers on the stack, Hidden cracks his Dothy to attempt to Swords Najeela. But Anthony has a Fierce Guardianship. This will give a card to Matt, who fires off a Force of Vigor to blow up Anthony's Arcane Signet and Soul Ring. But that really won't do anything, and all that's left is for Hidden to pop his clue to draw a card. Unfortunately, this is not an answer to save him, and the table then dies from infinite warriors and combats off Najeela, winning Anthony the game.
Game review. Well, it looks like Anthony's patience paid off. I guess I did get a little too greedy by not playing out the Baron, but I was really worried about Matt just going off, as he had a lot going on that last turn. And I was hoping that he would deal with Anthony, letting me activate Sisay at end step and go for the win on my turn. But man, I can't believe the battle we had on Anthony's turn, even through the Kutzel. It was definitely a great game, and I'm happy I got to show it to everyone. Thanks to everyone that joined for the games. And before everyone leaves, I want to thank our special Patreon members, Slyfox, Tango Down, and Holy Septic for their support of the channel, along with all of our other Patreon supporters as well. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.